are. Block Party's out. I'm your host, Mike Wahle. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying, hit that subscribe button, like, rate, and review us on our Process to Perform channel on YouTube. You check out Block Party where you get your podcast, the audio version. If you don't like looking at this and watching some video breakdown, go ahead and listen to the audio. You'll learn something. Our show is always sponsored by BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for everything football. BetOnline runs every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Then get in our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get on the action. BetOnline. The game starts here. BetOnline had a 2.5-point spread in favor of the Packers at home. And the game ended up, well, first of all, the Packers decided that they must have watched that damn Georgia-Alabama game the day before, where I think Georgia went down 28, tried to come back and win the game. So we spot them 28 points. End up making it close. It ends up being a 2.5, 3-point spread just the other way. And, I mean, listen, here's the thing about football. When you turn the ball over early, when you miss field goals early, when you drop interceptions or potential interceptions early against good teams, you lose football games. It's pretty easy. Jordan Love goes 32 of 54. 389 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks. Look, the bottom line is you never want to put your quarterback in that situation. Like, you don't want him dropping back 54 times. Unless it's Dan Marino, because that means you're down a ton of points. Gosh, Packers just didn't show up. It was weird watching when you watch this game. There's some guys playing hard, particularly on defense. There's some guys playing good football, but offensively we just didn't show up. Don't finish drives. Just, the way that even the first drive, the way that it ends, obviously the missed field goal, but leading up to that, with some guys just kind of like, man, you got to bring your A game when your A game is required. And, we're playing young guys. We're playing guys that are going to continue to develop and be good players, football players for this team. I think that hurt us a little bit on defense, certainly with some of the reads, coverages, kind of off the ball movement, and then that hurts you. On offense, we'll show a couple of plays where it's like, man, you got to bring some physicality to the game. The Vikings, if anything, are going to play hard with Brian Flores at DC, and we didn't match their intensity level at every position, and that's what's required when you have a defense that's playing at a high level like the Minnesota Vikings defense is playing at. So the Packers get held to 89 yards on the ground. I think it's the first time it's certainly going to hurt their 200-plus yard average or whatever they had before going into the game. This was, I'll say this, quite honestly, this was a more traditional running game just because of the score. I actually thought there was a lot of good in the ground between the tackles, much more so than last week, quite frankly. I don't know if the stats show that, but just watching how things were blocked. Look, this team is going to be, ultimately, is going to be much more of a gap team or a pin and pull team. They just don't have the guys inside that can move humans off the spot on their own, so run some of that zone stuff. And not a lot of – you really can't run the old Alex Gibbs like sideways zone anymore just because of the backside cutting, all the issues you have there. The Vikings D-line's good, not great. When you look at just straight rushing, you feel pretty good about what we did up front. The number of pressures, the number of free runners that got to Love, got him on the ground, or got him heated up. That's part of the system. And we saw, look, if you watched our game plan preview, where things were going to be open, who was showing up, like the Vikings didn't surprise anybody. They ran a lot of the stuff that they've been running. And, it's like what happens in some of these games, unfortunately, is, and a lot of the stuff wasn't on Love, right? But there's timing issues. We can say there's accuracy issues, but we don't know the whole story about. This is the same thing watching Aaron Rodgers with the Jets last night. Garrett Wilson on that big third down play, Aaron's just going like, not running the route that I want you to run, not running the timing that you are, not with the timing that you need to be running it. And so not all the picks were his fault. Certainly the one that hit off 2 of our guys is not his fault, but there's just a lot of balls that are off the mark. Part of that might be rust. that you always, when you come into these games and you don't perform well, at least in the first half, I'm sure immediately there's guys going, maybe he should have sat out another week. But then you see what he's capable of on the back end of this, dropping 28. Obviously, the game. Here's the thing about these games. I think it's great that they came back. And I've really just been talking offense. I'll talk defense. I'll watch tape on offense first. But it's great that they came back. I think that's a huge deal. To get as close as they did after losing or spotting 28 points. The game changes. The defense, everything changes, right? They play a lot more too high. They play, the difference between the linebackers and the safeties, just from a depth standpoint, is different. They don't want to get beat over the top. They don't want to give up quick scores. So it's a little bit easier to come back, I think, in the National Football League than it used to be. But having said that, like Jaden Reed had a great game. He had over 100, I think he had 130 some odd yards receiving. Wick showed up. He dropped a couple balls. We got to talk about timing, but we don't know if it's love or we don't know all the situations. You got to catch everything that's in your radius. But we've got weapons. Obviously, we might have lost Watson there for a couple of weeks. Don't know the story on that yet, at least as of this goes to print. But there's a lot of talent there, man. Josh Jacobs is a really good running back. Our offensive line, I think they're continuing to figure out how to put in plays that are in the best interest of them from a scheme and kind of like what they're good at standpoint. I think Tucker Kraft continues to be a weapon. I think you got to find a second tight end that can do something. I'll show that on tape right now. It's just not good enough. But there's a lot of positives. From when you lose, when you're down 28 and then you lose 31-29 or whatever it is, like it's not a depressing game at all. Okay, here's the first thing. You got to be ready when the game starts. And what do I mean by that? Like, we know that Minnesota Vikings are going to be slanting, okay? They're going to be bringing guys over. This is a little TT game. The St. Louis Rams used to run this against us when we run our gap stuff, and it's really difficult to block. You have to, but here's the thing. They tell you what they're doing with their stances. Like, they're tipping this play, okay? So we have to be ready. And you see what happens. The backside tackle and the backside guard, they have to make some sort of B1 or triple call, and they have to come a little bit flatter because the tackle gets caught here. The guard's trying to rise, so Sean Ryan's trying to rise. Obviously, Josh Myers has to get up on the linebacker 51. I don't know who 51 is. That kid played his ass off. Oh, my God, what a missile he was in that game. Just absolutely played really, really well. So I think Phillips comes off and make the play, or maybe this is 90, but one way or the other, they have this figured out except for the backside tackle. So Zach Tom just has to take a better step. This is a call and a communication to force him to do that. This isn't something you're going to be able to pick up on the fly, but you need to be ready for it. Yes, they end up not coming off on Phillips on the overlap. Now, here's the deal. We talked about this last time. They really can't play it straight. If they don't run their twists and stuff, they're not good enough to hold up. I mean, that's a lot of times when you go into a game, and this is like 90% of the teams in the National Football League do this, and the teams that don't, you're really scared about. But 90% of the time, when you just know that guys can't beat you or they know that they can't beat you, then they start running all these twists and stunts and all this nonsense, right? It becomes about the coordinator and the scheme, which it is about Flores, which is not – that's not an insult to anybody. It's just a fact of life. But they can't play it straight. Like, if this team lined up in a 6 or 7-man box and just played it straight the whole game, they would get absolutely mollywopped by most teams because they just don't have guys at every position that can hold up against the run. So on the backside, Rasheed Walker does a great job here of cutting off the spike nose or the spike end when they bring the safety off the edge. And because of it, you end up getting, a nice 8-9 yard gain. And then we run the gap. I think I showed this one from the end zone. And I think especially with Sean Ryan, I think this is what we have to do. You got to put him on the move as much as possible. And you have to put him in double teams as much as possible. And the game, when I say the game's changed, like, this is a traditional 7-man box with 3 linebackers that most teams, like a couple of years ago, they probably didn't even have 3 linebackers to actually play in the game anymore. But if you look at the numbers now, and if you count the quarterback, which I am, then you have 9 people in the box versus a real 9-on-7. Like, if you do your job on defense, you still don't have this manned up. Somebody has to come and make a play if everybody is just accounted for by one man. So in other words, if our quarterback's out of it, it's 8-on-7. Running back's got the ball, it's 7-on-7. If our 7 up front do the job and just single block every guy, there's nobody to account for these gaps. And the safeties are so far back that you're going to have, because you're playing this too high shell, that you're going to have a lot of success running the football. So when you bring in 2 tight ends or a tight end and a fullback, like this is why you see a lot of people moving to this stuff, because even in this like 1980s, 1990s, 2000s defensive system right here, where they just a traditional 4-3 with a shade and a 3 technique, right? I think Tampa ran this till they're blue in the face. You just don't know how to fit. You don't know. There's just so many things at the second level in particular that they're not as good at because they haven't seen it for so long. So they run the trade, they bring the guard around, bring Tucker Kraft does another great job. That's not Tucker, it's Sims. All right, here we go. Remember this play. I want to show you this. And it's a different look, but a lot of times they brought the backside linebacker, okay? Sometimes they walk up, sometimes they do it from depth. But we're going to run on the top here, we're going to run a variation of inside man, straight, outside man, 15-yard dig, basic route, whatever you want to call it. Okay, 10, 15-yard dig. Now on this one, linebacker looks over. He knows he has to drop to that side because that's where his partner came from. But he's reading the quarterback's eyes, continues to get depth, sees the seam open because it's too high. Oh, here's the other thing that's interesting. The Vikings did this a couple times. Is it in here? Let's see if I got this right. Yep. Okay. Last thing. The Vikings are on the snap, keeping the safety down and dropping the backside corner, turning the safety. Right. So it's a variation of cover 2, but the way that they run it, I forgot what people call this, but they cloud it back from the corner position, and they bring that safety up. Anyways, so Reed ends up making the play. Everything looks great. And they only rush 3. They bring the 4. Now you see the pick here. Watch this. This is the other part of this play. You see the pick that they're trying to do on a sheet. And our running back does a great job of knocking that linebacker off and then picking this up. That's absolutely critical, okay? And remember, he came from inside out. It's important for later. Good throw, good catch. Okay, now it starts being a problem. And I've shown plays where this player, Watson, does a good job working hard blocking, and you show some plays like this, especially at the line of scrimmage. I just don't know that he is like, I don't know if we should put him in this position. There's a disconnect because I don't think it's an effort thing. This is the second or third time this year where I'm like, come on, man, like Van Ginkel's right there. You have to go get him. Like, you're faster. Go, even if you get knocked down, just go do something so he can't make the play here. So that's essentially a 1-yard gain. And now you come in and just get thumped at the tight end position. I'll show this from the end zone. But, I mean, this is like nail, meat, hammer right here. I mean, come on, man. I mean, we got to bring it. We just absolutely got to bring it. He can't knock you back you're running full speed. You not only get knocked back, you should either get flat back or you should move him, but just getting like knocked back means you've slowed down into contact. And then Grenard makes the play. And Grenard's a stud, man. Like, I love that guy, but come on, guys. So we miss a field goal. So there. You can't finish a drive because you guys aren't blocking. Guys that should be blocking on, quite frankly, plays that aren't that hard. Especially the lead on the tight end. Like, it's not that hard, man. The guy's not going anywhere. I mean, you got to button your chin strap a little bit tighter, but he's not going anywhere. Then you miss the field goal. 7-0. Okay, same play. Here we go. Now we add a back out of the backfield to chip this, okay? And they're walked up. Hold on one second. Okay, they're walked up. But they've seen this on the sidelines now because he doesn't care about the third man. This isn't a bunch look. They chipped out, and he sees the end, and he sits there, and not only does we get the pick, but unfortunately Watson gets hurt. So going back to the well pretty soon, it's a variation of the same route concept, different call. I think the Vikings saw that, and of course, all these guys who are watching a ton of film are going to be able to pick up different kind of route combinations, especially particularly if it's out of the same look. Like if they were in a bunch and that back had released on time, maybe there's a little bit different. But you saw because the back didn't release on time, the outside guy was able to drop into that throwing lane. A little bit later, this is tough to pick up. Now, I just showed you the one inside out from the linebacker picking our tackle. Now the linebacker comes from outside in, which you never expect. So, like, if you're a tackle, you're used to a TE, so tackle end game. You're used to an ET where the end goes first and the tackle comes around. And now we're used to the linebacker end game where the linebacker picks you inside out like a TE and the end goes inside. What we're not used to, what most people haven't seen, is the tackle has to deal with like an ET from the linebacker or the safety coming off. And they do a really good job of just mixing up like same concepts. They just take it from a different angle, and they are able to block our tackle, get the end off for really an easy sack that puts us, back at the 35-yard line, which is on the border of being outside of field goal range. So that's a really good play that is really difficult to block. It's really tough to say that the running back is going to be able to get there. And let's be honest, like if I got a dude outside me who's little, and 91 starts spiking inside as a tackle, unless I've practiced that, like I'm locked in on my guy. Now I got to keep my outside foot back so I don't get picked, but tough play. Okay, we get two bites of the apple here, and look, there's a couple things going on. One, I think the Vikings did a good job. They did this the week before against the Texans, but they take that backside linebacker and they just run him right at the quarterback. We said if they did that, and we showed it from tape from last week, the middle of the field is open. He's actually open in two different spots here. I think he might be throwing to Dobbs. He overthrows the tight end. Dobbs touches it, bounces off. Now we got our second pick of the day, which is obviously very uncharacteristic of Jordan Love. This leads to another touchdown. Now we got the great orbit motion. I want to put some positive in here. So they're going to run the same thing up top that we just saw. They're going to run the seam, and then they're going to run the 15-yard dig. Okay, and there's really no way to defend this. This is what you love about our offense. And when we run the orbit, now you've got both of those. You got the flat player having to sit in the flat because they know right now if Jeremy touches that ball, he's one move away from making it a 20-yard game. The linebacker probably hasn't dropped as deep because he saw that orbit as well, so he stays in. So the depth between that second level and the third level of your defense is now 15 yards, which is a phenomenal amount of space. So even if the safety drives or the corner tries to stay, that's just a wide open play. And I mean, listen, I'm going to show. We can sit here and go through the second half. I think the big thing is like you can't start that way if you want to win football games. But like I said, just making a general statement, you have to appreciate that they did come back, score 28 points. I think their answer was 20-3 or something like that on the way to a unfortunate loss, but a lot of takeaway from it. So let's flip to the defensive side. The Vikings, we came in, talked about on the preview show. What are they going to do? Under center play action pass. Run out of 12 and 13, try to feature Aaron Jones. And then they've been deadly in the screen game, picking up like probably averaging somewhere around 15 yards a play. Okay. Obviously, Justin Jefferson goes into that. Jordan Addison coming back and being healthy and all of that. I mean, there's a lot going on. I think probably if we're just being fair about this, there's two things that are happening in the defense that there's maybe three things that were happening that on this particular Sunday that you can't overcome. One, arguably your best player, Jerry Alexander's not playing. You've got Justin Jefferson. Now, last time they played, Jared had a pretty good game against them. They played the time before that, I think in the home opener or the season opener was a rough one. So Justin Jefferson has a great day. Addison has a great day. We're playing young guys in the secondary, and I'll show you a couple of plays where maybe they're scheming it this way, but it doesn't really fundamentally make sense the way they're scheming it as far as how much space they're leaving good players. And then our pass rush, and whether it's because we don't have a true pass rusher on the inside, whether it's because some of the stuff we talked about with Gary last week, it's still the same problem. And but I think for the most part, when you run 12 or you run 13, maybe not run 13, but when you run 12 personnel, when you're running big guys all the time, when you're under center, when you have the threat of the run, when everybody's keen on Aaron Jones, certainly the pass rush suffers. And what we'll see is here's the thing about Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold can play catch, right? Sam Darnold can play catch. That wasn't ever the issue we talked about in the previous show. What is he not good at? Processing speed. If NFL level, processing speed, pocket awareness. And so on the big play to JJ, and we'll show it, they go 8-man protection or 7-man protection, and we rush 3 or 4 guys. So they're going like super max protection because they just know that their guys are fundamentally their receivers are better than our secondary, which is, especially without Alexander, that's the case. So I think without Jair, the secondary is looking undermanned. Darnold ends with 20-28, 275 yards, 3 touchdowns. I know McKinney had the pick was a bad call. I mean, it helps him, it helps the stats, and it helped us, but it was a bad call. Jefferson and Addison combined for 157, 2 touchdowns. Addison had the jet sweep, which I'll show because that's another thing where you're playing young players, but you really have to make sure that we're bringing it from a physical standpoint. So I have to do something here to get rid of this film. So I'll remove that. And then I'll bring something new in. I think the fun part about even not being thrilled with the way that the team played, I think there's an energy and a belief that you have with the quarterback, with the wide receivers, and even from an effort standpoint with the defense. Maybe I'm crazy. I should go back and watch some games from last year, but they look like they're. What's the biggest problem on the Green Bay Packers for the last 3 years? We're just being honest. If you're gonna break the game into 3 sections, what's the worst section? Special teams. It still is. Got to make field goals. It's ridiculous. All right, here we go. First things first, under center play action. So they hit my things. Okay, under center screen game, Aaron Jones. God damn it. Jones actually catches this ball in front of his lead blocker. He's way too fast out, to be honest with you. He's way too fast out, but he's so good it doesn't matter. Okay, this is Quay. Okay, so good job. His legs are wrapped up. And you drive him to the ground late, and then you stand over him. It's I just don't sometimes these young guys, man, I don't know if they know how it works. That's not a trash talking play. You didn't do anything. His legs were taken away. That my son could tackle you if your legs were taken away. It's not fair to my son. There's a lot of good on defense, by the way, in the tape. I'm not going to show everything. There's some good stuff here. You show sometimes when you lose, you show the bad players. There's a lot of good on defense. Eric Wilson plays hard too. I didn't put a single clip of him in. I should have. He plays hard. Okay, when you're in shotgun, you have opportunities with Sam Darnold. What do we talk about? Pocket presence, right? Processing speed. So I think this is McDuffie down on the bottom. Does a good job of putting this guy out. Comes back in to make the play. Oh, got to get that. Darnold's running to his left. Everything he's doing, he's not comfortable with. Running to his left, and then we have to be able to capitalize. So this is another one of those plays where the score and the tone and the feel of the game dramatically changes in the first quarter if we make a field goal and get this pick. He knows it. Max protect. Why do we do it? Because you got to get the best player on the field space to run away from the guy. Not much we can do. They do it every year. Every time we play them. So they go over max or super max protect. They chip out. You got 3-on-2 in the middle. And he's got so much time. I mean, look how open. I mean, honestly, like, and you don't. Is that, I don't know. I think that's Stokes. But you just go like, what are you supposed to do? Like, so I think Stokes is not. Stokes. So the physicality in Stokes' game is severely lacking. But you certainly can't blame him for getting outrun across the field by Justin Jefferson. At least I can't. All right. Motion over to 2x2. Now, this is what I don't understand. I think McKinney's coming down, so I think Bullard's playing back here. So you show too high, and you're really showing like cover 4 here, okay? They drop down. But what the hell are we doing on the hash when you got a 2x2? Look, even if you're saying the backside here on the side, like get to the middle of the field. Because who's over on the other side running a double move? I mean, this is what I'm talking about. It makes sense. You shouldn't be sitting on the hash mark this whole time. And maybe you do that because, I mean, they have Addison on one side. They have Jefferson on the other. And now you don't know what with Jair not there, you don't know what you're supposed to do. But you would think that if you're going to bring down and either lurk or run some sort of cover 3, you would think that you want that safety to get to the middle of the field on a fairly balanced look offensively, because he has no way he can help. And you're seeing that your corner's playing outside leverage. Go back real quick. You see your corner's playing outside leverage here. So that 20 yards between the numbers in the far hash, or however it's 30, whatever that number is, it must be 20 yards. I mean, Sam Darnold, we're acting like Sam Darnold doesn't have a noodle arm, has a noodle arm or something. Like, he can throw. That's way too much ground to cover. It's impossible. Let's go back. Golly. Now, this is just, again, the same thing. It's a numbers game. If I showed you the end zone copy of this, the Vikings simply have enough people to block our players, and our safeties are 20 yards deep and 15 yards deep. And that's the only thing that's happening here. We're playing so deep. Maybe we're worried about their wide receivers, but they're in this, this run formation that they run a lot of play action pass off of. But our safety's first instinct is to go backwards. And if I showed the end zone copy, which I did not do, everybody has their gap. Their gaps are blocked up. There's just extra space because there's not another guy to fill in. They have an extra man. Like, in other words, when we say your gap is, you're in your gap, you can be in your gap, and your gap can be a foot wide, or it can be, 4 yards wide. So, like, right now, Quay actually kind of gets to his gap, but he's in a bad spot because they have a good double team. They move. I think it's Kenny. They move him really well. But he can't keep gap integrity of a 4-yard gap. You need a safety to come make a play sometimes, and our safeties are too deep. And this is a schematic issue because they're worried about the receivers, I suppose. But there's not much you can do from it unless you really win a one-on-one matchup. Like, if they just do their job and have stalemate, they're going to have room to run. Okay, I love to see this. So they bring this, I love when they let Quay shoot in the BA gap and be the aggressor. We come over the top and just like form tackle. This is, tackling 101 day one. That is exactly how you do it. Great, great job. Motion's over. We show man. Now, can we please look how high our defensive ends are over Sam Darnold? I know Sam Darnold took a step up, so imagine him a step back. But good Lord, like, what are you going to do back there? It just doesn't make any sense. So now when you collapse the pocket. So why do I always talk about that? Because when you collapse the pocket from level in and they step up, you are within an arm away from grabbing the quarterback. And if he steps out, you can turn and follow him flat. You don't have to chase up. When you're over the top, the distance between the defensive tackles and the defensive ends is so great that Sam Darnold can run for a 15-yard gain. That doesn't make any sense. Quay McDuffie do the best here, but that's just, or is that Bullard do their best here, but that's not realistic. So this is crucible time down at the bottom. Talk about Eric Stokes. Safety's over because they have trips over on their right, our left. So he's one-on-one with a dude. And they know he's gonna get tested. And I mean, they throw 2 flags, and it's like he's surprised. It's like, what are you surprised about? Now, listen, I don't know. I think if I was over there, I'd just foul him at the line of scrimmage because it looks better than getting the ball at the 1-yard line. But like, don't be surprised here. Come on. Okay, so we bring in this is Cooper playing linebacker. And now that Quay's in, Quay shoots the gap. Okay, we have to go man. They have Jefferson in the backfield, so we go man at the safety level. This is, again, what am I mean palms up? Like, this is a what are we doing moment. So you got one job right here. Yeah, you got to take the guy in purple. Okay, where are you going, man? Where are you going? This should have been a touchdown. He actually misread this. But this is a rookie moment where I don't know what he was thinking. I think maybe he was going to go try to butt up. You know, Aaron Jones is like an all-pro player. Like, get close. You're fast. Use your speed. But you just ran right into the blocker. Couldn't have made this play easier. And these are little mistakes that if you make enough paper cuts, you die by 1,000 paper cuts, stuff like this. So now you get the jet sweep. Okay, Keyshawn Nixon, like, you got to track him, okay? Fair enough. And we've talked about him having to be like a more consistent tackler, okay? These guys are really good. He's obviously, like, you can just see by his eyes, he's tracking I would say he's tracking the wrong hip. Like, he's too far ahead. Okay, you got to use the sideline as your friend here. There's 2 guys out there. Okay, fair enough. But what are we doing here? Like, I think that's Justin. Dude, run through this guy. Like, what are we doing? I mean, you just get chested, 2 hands on your chest. Like, you don't even put your hands on the receiver. There's no way you should just stop momentum right here. You should knock the dog snot out of that receiver and force the cutback, or at least force him further to the sideline. Like, be physical. Good God, man. Those are kind of the frustrating plays where you're like, maybe they score anyways, maybe they don't. But come on, like, we got to be the most physical football team. We can't be a finesse team. I mean, we can, but you're not going to win Super Bowls that way. All right, so the motion over. This is after the second pick. And you can just see, like, the safeties, as soon as he walked over, the safety looked over, one safety looks to the other and, like, trying to get his attention. He's like, man, we got a major issue coming up over here in aisle 5 because they're going to run the fade again, and there's nothing we can do. They're talking it. They're still talking. Like, yeah, ugh. And that's a wrap. Not much you can do there. They have guys, and their guys right now. This is like when it's not the same, but this is kind of like when they drafted Randy Moss in '98, and then the next year we had to draft 3 corners. Now, one of them, Chi-Town Mike McKenzie, was the only one that panned out. But I mean, I guess Vincent got us Amon Green, so I guess 2 of them panned out. But we're going to have to keep him. We just got McKinney, and we just drafted Bullard, but right now you just see the balance of power in that particular area of the field. If they have a quarterback that can throw, which we didn't think they did, that particular area of the field, like, they're net better than we are. We have to come up with some solutions. Probably in this game, we thought it was going to be the pass rush. I certainly did. I'm constantly shocked when I watch Rashawn Gary and Ed O'Neill, and Rashawn Gary runs over the top and gets blocked. I'm constantly shocked. And O'Neill's a good player. Brian O'Neill. I call him Ed because I married with children. But a good player. But I mean, some of the stuff you're like, come on, man. Let's get more. Let's press the pocket. Let's make Sam Darnold move off the spot. Just getting him to move off the spot, we already know from from history that he's not the same player. Listener questions. Where the hell did the pass rush unit go? Again, everything we just said. The number one thing is you have the threat of Aaron Jones running the football. The screen game was working really well, and they max protected when they needed to protect. Like this is what happens when you have superior. Addison is a superior wide receiver, and Jefferson's obviously all world. So when you have, they don't even have was it Hawkinson, the T.J. Hawkinson, the tight end. But when you have all world guys with talent and speed, then you can max protect. You can go on 2 and 3 man routes. You can do all this stuff because they just they'll run past the first, second, third guy. It doesn't matter. Packers have had serious issues with penalties so far this season. What can NFL teams do during the week to improve? This is actually a really good question because it's happening everywhere. And what I think happens personally is the NFL does again, this is brand. We're in the brand management or brand development cycle of the National Football League right now, right? We went from draft and develop to free agency to to player development to now this is like NFL brand development. How much money can we churn out? We don't mind hurting the game, and then we're gonna have to recycle at some point when it's not good enough. The NFL does a good job of coming up with like this year they wanted to help the pass rushers, so they're making sure the tackles are all closer to the line of scrimmage. They're calling a bunch of nonsense. They don't call against the Chiefs, but they call against everybody else. They do a good job of coming up with something that is not going to be that consequential to the game, identifying it and then pushing it and creating narratives because we talk about it. So it's on ESPN all the time. It's on Fox Sports. People are talking about these things, and talking is good. It keeps it relevant. People aren't going to stop watching. They're just going to keep talking. So I think the only thing you can do is just have some discipline, have some accountability. And I know from my own experience, when you get in those situations, the only person that can really get you out of having penalty mistakes and all, understand. So you have to identify, assess, and correct. You have to identify what's going on, assess why it's happening. Maybe it's your footwork. Maybe your hands are starting from outside, going back to inside. And then you just got to work like hell to correct it. And that's all these guys got to do. Is the lack of pass rush with Ford due to scheme, execution, or talent? Yes. Again, I think we don't have a true pass rush, true 3 technique that is an absolute unit of the pass rush game. I've talked about Kenny before and my thoughts on it, but you don't have Lucas Van Ness is not a pass rusher. Preston Smith is not a 12 sack a game a season pass rusher. Emegbari might become that, but he's not right now. And Rashawn Gary at this moment in time is not having a ton of success rushing the passer. So where does it come from if it doesn't come from bringing Quay? I think the most effective thing we can do is bring Quay Walker. I think him on a running back is more effective than anything we have right now. I'm curious about what you think about LaFleur's leadership. Oh, that's interesting. He often loses shit, whether it's a ref or player. Okay. Holmgren had a temper. I would have never considered his sideline demeanor as anything but just part of his personality, and I don't really have a thought one way or another that reflects leadership. Now, everybody's got a different way and a different style of coaching, of dealing with the sidelines, of dealing with officials. I don't think Matt LaFleur, in my estimation, has done anything that I haven't seen from other good coaches in the National Football League. Again, people have different ways to handle it. I think that you don't see a lot of ex-players that are coaches, and I'm sure you can find one. But when I think about the ex-players that are coaches that I know right now, you think of Vrabel. I know he's not coaching right now, but you think of D'Amico. I don't see the ex-players just losing their minds as much as maybe some of the non-guys. And I just think it's a different way to handle your business, and it's maybe a demeanor thing. I don't know what the impetus for that is, but it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. But yeah, I think LaFleur, I think he's been doing a hell of a job. Sometimes it's not his fault the field goal kicker's not making field goals, and it's not his fault that his quarterback got hurt and his timing was off the receivers. That stuff happens. You're still calling a good game. They didn't get out. Everybody gets out schemed a handful of plays. You're not getting out schemed. Sam Darnold's on one right now. The Minnesota Vikings are on one right now. Things are just working for them. Stuff. Is our front four good enough to go? There's a lot on this. I know our Vikings have 2 good tackles. Their interior line is not as good. It seemed like we didn't. Yeah, same Same answers. Oh, here's a good one. What is Van Ness doing wrong that he can't earn more snaps than Smith? Smith's a better player. He's not doing anything wrong. He was a first-round draft pick at 13 who's a project. And so we have expectations for him that are not fair to him. Maybe he turns into, all pro Aaron Campman. But, when Aaron came in, I'm not both Iowa kids. I think Lucas Van Ness is a better natural athlete than Aaron, but I'm trying to position this because Aaron wasn't a great player until he was. He wasn't a great pass rusher until he was. And Lucas Van Ness has done nothing wrong. He just is a hardworking player that has to still become a more elusive, more dynamic pass rusher if he wants to kind of earn that first round status. And it's certainly not to say that he won't do it. And quite frankly, he's in a great place to do it. But these things take time. I just don't think he's as good as Preston Smith. Thoughts on Sean Ryan looking real good 2 games in a row? Oh. Well, yeah, Jordan Morgan getting hurt probably is the best thing that could have happened for Sean Ryan because you're going in and you're playing the whole game. And I do think that helps. I don't know that he looked real good against Tennessee. But I get your point. You're not pointing to the film and going like, oh, that's the reason, right? I kept saying too much. The more that we run gap stuff, the more that we run doubles, the less that we run single block zone, or the less that we run zone on the backside where he can get kind of washed down. I think that he's pretty decent in pass pro. I thought that last year. He can improve on his hands, but I think he's pretty decent in pass pro. For me, what he lacks is some violence on his second step when he goes into contact, particularly on the backside of things. And so if you're just practicing that every day, you're an athlete, like you can get better at that real quick. And if he just continues to work at it, like this is the big thing with all of these guys. Everyone's got a different body type, so they're good at different things. But there's only so many things, particularly at offensive line, like a guard. Like I play guard, man. Like there's only so many things you have to get good at before you kind of stand out for being super effective at those things. So we used to run a play where we called it a chip. So Flanagan would have a shade on him, and I would step back into him and kind of chip this guy and then go up to the linebacker. Well, we got so good at chipping that it turned into this thing where we would see how far we could knock that nose tackle to the other side of Mike, because we just practiced it so many times. It was a staple of our offense because a lot of times we're running over defenses and we run like a weak side run, that it forces teams to like shoot their linebacker in that gap or like start shooting their will and playing the linebacker over, because if they let me get that second step down, with how good Mike was with his hands, I could hit the hip and we would just create this huge hole. And it's not because we were like superior athletes, it's just because we did the damn thing so many times. It's like bringing in KB and running Marco and Tausch with the double team, getting great movement, and then KB just, and Bubba just mauling that trade. If you practice that stuff enough, I'm not saying it doesn't matter who's in there, like KB being 350 help, obviously. But for the most part, those reps, like you get better at certain things from doing them over and over and over again. And that's why you see a lot of these offenses, we think they're doing a bunch of different stuff and they're not. Like the Lions doing the same thing almost every damn play. They got 4 plays probably. That, when you break down, like how many plays do you really have that you have to learn some new footwork? It's like 4. Everything else, all the window dressing is different, but that's it. So I'll be honest with you, I don't really know who we're playing next week. I know that we need to win, and This is a good football. It's a good football team. The Minnesota Vikings are just on right now. Here's the deal. I appreciate you. Mike Wahle 16 on Twitter, Process to Perform on Instagram. Subscribe, rate, review. See you guys.